Hi, my name is Ashley.
And I'm Megan.
And we're two moms from San Diego who have children with the mitochondrial disease, often referred to as Mito. We were looking around trying to find some podcasts or a platform where parents can listen to the different types of diseases or different supplements, doctors, and there isn't one. So we decided that we're going to make one. There needs to be a place for parents and families or friends to be able to go to and listen to people's stories, listen to where they can get resources, and it not necessarily just about mitochondrial diseases, but the different things that are out there that we have no idea about. I mean, when you are pregnant and you find out that, well, when you find out you're pregnant, you don't plan to have a special needs child. That just happens. And there's a whole world out there that we don't know anything about. And so we're just here to try to help others find those little things that we don't know exist.
Yes, or the things that we along the way have found, and to help others find those resources as well. Being in this mitochondrial world for quite a few years now, it's definitely helpful if you can start off when you do have a child. Start off knowing a lot more information than necessarily we did. So we'd like to be able to help parents out there and families to get more information and to just, listen to our stories and just have someone to talk to or get references and information from.
And each of them, we're hoping to bring in different people to talk and their own Mito stories, because there's so many different diseases. And each person has a completely different experience. And no two children are alike, but there's so many different resources to dive into that maybe I haven't experienced it, but Megan has. Mm-hmm. And the best way to be able to get what you need is to talk. And that, at least for my experience with my daughter, that's the only way that we found anything. Because not every doctor, you can hear
that's
Troy
my
in the background. Doctors don't necessarily know how to guide you. Their job is to see the symptoms, see what's going on with your child, and they don't necessarily know about all these different resources that make your life a little bit easier. So hopefully throughout this podcast, we'll be able to cover some of those things. If you have any questions, you can reach out. We'll try to make it easy to listen to.
Yeah, and just listening to our stories and other moms' stories, and just feel like you have a place to listen and find some resources,
or even to speak. And it's also when my Mito life began, it was really nice to hear about different fundraisers or doctors on different states. Social media was huge for me because I was able to meet other families or see other kids with my daughter's disease. And I know we haven't really covered that yet.
Yeah.
But it's very helpful, and you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll cover all that.
Yeah, and mitochondrial disease does tend to be rare because it does go undiagnosed quite a few times. So as Ashley said, meeting other people that are going through similar things that you are is just, there's a lot to be said for that. It's comforting, and you also create friendships that help you get through difficult times. So it's been, it's a road, but it's one that is a little bit easier when you have other people with you on it.
It feels lonely, but you're not alone. You don't have to do it alone.
No.
Yeah. But I think it's important to kind of go backwards a little bit and tell our story, how we met, and then also tell everybody about our kids. Mm-hmm. and why we're doing. They're the reasons why we're doing this podcast.
Yes.
For all the parents out there. So let's take a step back. Megan and I met not that long ago, but
About a year.
About a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just after the 2018,
Yeah.
Mito 5K. And there was a luncheon that was going on. Dr. Navio, who all the fundraising for the Mito 5K went to research that he's doing that we'll also talk about in another podcast. But we met at this luncheon, and I was Christina. She kind of heads the 5K, and she invited me, and I didn't know anybody at the time. We had just received our we didn't even have a full diagnosis. We had a maybe diagnosis, and I had reached out to Christina, and she invited me to this luncheon. So I got to meet all of these amazing moms, and I do mean amazing because we are our own tribe.
Yes.
And it does not matter who you are. The second you get a Mito diagnosis, you're, for better or for worse, in this tribe.
Yeah.
So Christina asked me, my first question to her was, can I bring Angie? She told me no, and I had like a panic attack. So I was like, oh my gosh. And Angie was breastfed, and so I was terrified because she would not take a bottle.
And how old was she at that time?
She was not a year.
Okay.
So we got our first idea of a diagnosis. So my daughter's name is Angelina. And we got our first idea of a Mito diagnosis between 7 and 8 months. We had our 6-month checkup with our pediatrician, and she was not sitting up on her own. She had really low, well, not really low, but alarmingly low upper body muscle tone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first hint that something might not be right. And our pediatrician said, I'm hoping that she's going to catch up, but just in case, let's go ahead and schedule an MRI just to make sure that there's nothing underlying that we need to know about.
Oh, wow. So that was the first thing that they did was an MRI.
Yeah,
okay.
There was nothing else. We just went straight for it.
To the MRI. Good.
Yeah, so we did the MRI, and then they also did some blood work.
Mm-hmm.
And Mito was not even mentioned at this point. We were just going to a neurologist. We went to the neurologist, got our blood work done. The lactic acid was really high, and so we did it again. It was even higher the second time. So that's when we finally got to the MRI. And then we went in, and he said, the neurologist at the time, his name is Dr. Nelson, and he said, I am not a specialist, but I share an office with someone who I think really needs to look at these images. And that was our first mention of Dr. Haas. We got our appointment with him, which I think it was probably pretty hard to get into, but our pediatrician and our nurse, Ashley, she really pushed for it, and we got in, and I think that was, so our MRI was around 7 months, so it must be about 8 months that we got our first kind of diagnosis. We didn't have genetic testing yet. Mm-hmm. So they thought, because of the lactic acid and the MRI showed lesions on her brain, that she had Lee syndrome. And I felt really bad for Dr. Haas.
Yeah.
Because I think he's probably had to tell so many people that when he saw us, he had a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And we were told to go Google it.
Oh, which is the worst thing.
You know what? It was not the thing that you really think a doctor is going to tell you. But at the same time, I think it was better because it gave us more hope, because we didn't have genetic testing. And we were like, okay, so he's telling us this, so it might not be this. And so that night, our pediatrician called us and said, you need to come to my office.
Oh.
So we next day we went into our pediatrician's office. He made us his last appointment, cleared everything just to make sure that he had time to talk to us. And we, as much as you can say the word lucky, we were really lucky because he had a daughter that died from Mito, and he saw all the signs with Angie.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say lucky is because how would you fall into an office with a pediatrician that went through it?
Yeah,
You
that
don't.
is so rare. There's so many doctors that don't even know what it is.
Yeah, and so he held our hand for a lot of it. We went back to Dr. Haas, obviously, got our genetic testing. They tested Andrew, myself, with my husband, myself, and Angie, and then we just played the waiting game. And it just happened that she had her first Mito crash around the same time. We thought she was having seizures.
Yeah.
And it ended up she wasn't. She was epileptic, but she wasn't having any seizures. She ended up having a heart problem. It was Wolff Parkinson's White syndrome, which nobody really expected it was going to be that. So she got put on
Keppra,
yes, and we only made it 2 days, and she crashed on it.
Oh wow.
And I think, not to make anyone feel scared of Keppra.
Yes, Troy takes Keppra as well.
Just each kid is different, and Angie couldn't handle it, and so even if we could, and she had at that time, she every once in a while would take a bottle, most often not, but once the Keppra was in the picture, she stopped completely.
Yeah.
So, and this is all obviously right before I met you at the luncheon, but the Keppra kind of stopped everything for us, and we couldn't get her to take anything orally by mouth. And so she couldn't have any of the supplements that the doctors wanted her to have that were supposed to help her Mito cocktail. So the day 2 of Keppra, even if she had taken it, we were going to take her off of it because she was not the same kid anymore. She couldn't show emotion at all. She couldn't, not that she's never laughed, but she couldn't smile. She was just too tired. She didn't have the energy to really acknowledge you. And she kind of just was this shell of a baby that was sitting there. But that was the beginning of our diagnosis. So when Christine invited me, I was freaking out because
you couldn't bring her.
Angie wasn't going to eat. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't be gone that long.
I'm the walking refrigerator here.
Yeah. And then I got lost. And it was, yeah.
Well, UCSD is a crazy campus.
Yeah, it was. But how old was Troy when?
Troy was 1.5 when he was diagnosed. And we go to the same doctor's office that you took Angie to, but we have different doctors. Troy was, healthy when he was born. There was nothing that would have signified anything was wrong. But he, like you said, he wasn't with Angie. He wasn't meeting his milestones. He couldn't hold his head up. And the doctor said he had hypotonia. And our doctor, Dr. Butler, he said, well, why don't we send you to a neurologist just to check, just to be sure that everything's okay. And we actually saw, which I'm not sure, I can't actually remember his name at this point, but we saw a neurologist, and it was the only pediatric neurologist, and we have Sharp in San Diego. And he was basically, well, he's going to be fine, he'll catch up, and that kind of thing. And I think something as a mother, you just know. And even though I'd never had a child before, he was my first and my only, there was something wrong.
I thought all my friends had lied to me.
Yeah.
I was like, is having a baby really this hard? Like, how did everybody else get through it and no one told me how hard this was?
Yeah. So it's definitely, you have that mother's intuition. And unfortunately, which we'll probably talk about at some point, we had to petition our insurance to even be able to go and see another neurologist to get a second opinion. We have an amazing children's hospital here, Rady's Children's Hospital, and we wanted to see a neurologist that was affiliated with that. So we did, and he actually suggested that we do a muscle biopsy, which was the first test that he ever had. And we had the muscle biopsy. It came back with what are called red ragged fibers, and that's when he basically referred us to Dr. Haas. I remember this is such a, you hear when you get that diagnosis, it completely changes your life. But I was literally out, which there'll probably be a lot of crying on this podcast.
I've already been fighting back.
So, well, you're better than I am. My friend Paul and I were out for a walk with Troy, and he called and said that he has mitochondrial disease, and I had no idea what that was. I'd never heard of it before in my life. And he said, but there are treatments for it. There are treatments for it, and we're going to refer you to Dr. Haas, and then we'll go from there. And of course, he didn't tell us to Google it, but of course that's exactly what I did. And as soon as I went home and Googled it, my life was changed. I was completely crushed, and it's a very hard thing when you're not necessarily even told at that point, but your child has a fatal disease that there is no cure for. And the treatments are supplements. And unfortunately, it's not a cure. Yeah. And it's a progressive disease. And so,
which is when someone says there's not a cure for something, it just, what?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
We're now in 2020. How do we not have a cure? And not just not have a cure, we're not close to a cure.
No.
There's a lot of clinical trials. There's a lot of stuff doctors are trying to find. But there was a little girl that passed away 21 years ago, and it was the same exact story. I didn't mention this earlier, but my daughter Angelina, she passed away in April, and when you hear your story being told by a mom that it happened to them 21 years ago, it's really hard to believe that we live in an era that is not close.
Exactly.
And you want to give people hope, and you want to advocate and say all these amazing things that are happening. But when you get that first wave of diagnosis, it's flooring, but you just don't believe it. How could science not be there?
No. And it's almost like you don't know, what do you do with that diagnosis? How do you live your life? What do you do?
And then they tell you that they can't tell you.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Every kid is completely different.
They can have the exact same, all the way down to the DNA, same diagnosis, and the disease can still take a completely different road.
Yeah. I've not met yet one child that was exactly like Angie, or even close to it. Even close to it.
Yeah, and I haven't met any child that's like Troy.
Yeah.
So it's definitely... It's a scary thing, but it's like I'm sitting here talking to you, and having this friendship and being able to talk about our kids helps me to feel better. It helps us to navigate this whole mitochondrial world and the other moms that we know. So
it helps make your world a little bit smaller, because it makes it feel so big, especially like we live in San Diego, which most people will think, oh, that's a pretty big city.
Yeah, it's a mecca for the health industry.
But for our kids, I mean, so you imagine you're gonna run into other Mito kids, but you don't. And, no. And I know you don't have like a pure diagnosis yet, but for Angie, for having Leigh syndrome, there's one or maybe other child, or who's not even a child anymore. He's 20, which is amazing. You don't hear of that ever. and there's also a lot of cross diagnosis too, because like for Troy, you've been told he's Lee-like.
Yes.
Doesn't mean he has Lee syndrome,
No.
but he's Lee-like. And the same thing for Angie. She had Mellis, which was Lee-like, but she fell into the category of Lee more than Mellis. Which I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But
There are quite a few different mitochondrial diseases, and we'll talk about the different ones as well.
We'll
hopefully
cover all of them. There's a lot,
and we might not say them quite correctly. But.
Most likely, more probably say things a lot inaccurately. Apologize ahead of time. But you guys recently were able to do genetic testing again.
Yes,
and Troy's 11.
Troy is 11.
Amazing.
It's amazing. If the statistics, unfortunately, for mitochondrial disease is only 50% of kids live to the age of 10. So that's huge, and it's devastating. And Troy's 11, and thankfully he's been pretty healthy. We've had some issues, but he's never had any mito crashes. We haven't seen anything like that. And he's 11, soon to be 12 in March. So it's pretty amazing when you hear statistics like that. So like you said, that young man that's 21 years old, I mean, that's like a miracle.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Most of, I think, the moms that we are affiliated with so far, a lot of their children are younger. So, unfortunately, we see that statistic just within our group of moms.
Yeah, and we're a small group.
We are.
We're not, we spread out. There's a few of us here in San Diego, but we spread out to LA or closer to LA. I don't really know how to
that
talk
area.
About LA.
And we have some families in Fresno too, so a little bit of Northern California. But no, we are a very small group, and that's another reason that we are doing this podcast. We, want to meet more families and
too with the misdiagnosis. There are more families. There are. They just don't know it yet.
Exactly.
And which can be good and can be bad. I mean, it's bad because you can't get the help you want because you don't know who to reach out to. But I think I don't know, I guess I can't say that because before Angie, I wouldn't have even known who to reach out to. If Mito hadn't even been mentioned, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, same thing, I didn't know what a mitochondrial disease was.
No. And it's very interesting. We've been to a couple conferences and different things that some of the doctors have put on. There's a Dr. Bowles that's in more of the LA area. And we drove up for a conference there, and there were so many parents in that room that had come from all over that their doctors had no idea what their child had, and somehow they had made their way to figuring this out and seeing Dr. Bowles. But, I mean, all over the state, there aren't that many specialists. I mean, we go to the Mitochondrial Symposium.
Are you guys going to go to that this year?
Yes, yeah, we are. Cool. Yeah. So,
which is in June.
Yes,
it's
in June. And so, there's just a lot of doctors that aren't familiar with it, or they heard a little bit about it in medical school, but they just don't know. And unfortunately, mitochondrial disease presents with so many different system issues, whether it's the digestive system or the neuromuscular system. And so they get diagnosed with different things, or they're just trying to pinpoint what's going on, and they don't see the overall mitochondrial picture. So there are definitely, just from social media, there are people that travel all over just to go see a doctor.
And Andrew and I were going to move when we first found out, just because you find out you have a special needs kid with whatever the diagnosis is. So your first intuition is to, okay, our life is going to change. And we have to figure out how to afford this new life. Yeah. And insurance a lot of times just doesn't cover it. And it's not, that is going to be a podcast in its own. But
Insurance podcast.
Insurance. but like, at least for us, for Mito, there's a lot of things that are not covered, like the supplement. And there's families that it's hundreds of dollars a month. And then you have your kid who can't get sick. Not that they don't have the ability to, but they cannot get sick.
Yes.
Because that could end their life. And so Andrew and I were trying to figure out, okay, one of us is not going to be able to work anymore. Because Angie is going to get to an age where we're not going to be able to afford a nanny or a babysitter. That's not even in the picture eventually. Maybe the first 2 years, but your kids are kids and they get bigger and their abilities are going to be different. You have to stay not just healthy in the sense of you can't get sick, but you need to be strong because like Troy, he's so tall.
I'm 5'8" and he is maybe an inch shorter than me.
Yeah.
And he's only 11 years old. And that's exactly what, went on with us this last year. Fortunately, we have family that has been amazing and helped to take care of Troy. His grandmother and aunt were both nurses. But his grandmother's, she's older, and we had a couple of family health situations. And so this it's been a little over a year now, I stopped teaching and had to stay, I now stay home with Troy full time. And there's so many things because mitochondrial disease is so complicated. Like you said, not getting sick. It's like you can't just leave your child with anyone. It's so difficult to understand.
And they can't tell you what's going on.
No.
A lot of times they're nonverbal. And so there was no way that I was going to send Angie to school. If she can't tell me what's happening and I'm not there to make sure that she is safe, there's no way. I mean, I would love to trust people, but I don't.
No, I went to school.
Especially not with my kid.
And I went to school with Troy. I worked 60%, and he went to preschool in the morning, and I went to school with him every day. I was, it's so difficult, and you have to make sure all the kids are healthy in there, and I'd have to take them home, and no, they're not.
Yeah.
No, kids are kids, and families are families.
So Andrew and I were, when I made us go on a tangent about
about moving.
Yeah, we were gonna move because we didn't think we'd be able to stay in San Diego, but we realized that we have our doctors right here and ones that we need, not just a doctor. No. It's a Mito doctor.
Exactly.
And so even if we had moved away, we would still be coming back. And so it would have been too hard to move to Arizona or somewhere that mortgage would have been cheaper, or just the cost of living would have been less. So that's why we stayed, because people are not, more often than not, you don't live in an area where there's a Mito doctor.
No, absolutely.
And there's I can maybe think of 4, not even that many. I think I can think of 4, but 2 that have enough reputation to, I don't want to say anyone doesn't know what they're doing, but they have a good pool of people that or a lot of patients that they see on a day-to-day basis, that I feel that they have a stronger knowledge. And one is here in San Diego.
Yeah, and we'll definitely spend one of our podcasts talking about the different doctors. Going to the symposiums, you actually have time to actually meet and talk to the doctors. So there are a few. There's actually 3 in California. There's one at Stanford, Dr. Enns, Dr. Bowles is in LA, and Dr. Haas here. So California is actually lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, just across the state, there aren't that many. And I know my parents live in Northern California, and they always asked us when Troy was a baby, and, are you sure you're going to stay in San Diego? And of course, San Diego, I absolutely love it. But I've always known I will never leave this area because of Troy. I need to know that I have a doctor that understands what's happening to him, and, we'll get the best medical care possible.
I'm scared to leave. And Angie's not even here anymore. But there's so many times that I think about, just our family, like my sister had my nephew and she's about to have my niece, and I know that my sister's, she donated her eggs, and all of the kids are fine, but it's still in the back of my head, and I feel like I need to be here. I need to be close to you guys. And it's also just my, I don't know.
It's okay, I already did.
I know.
It's your turn.
My Mito story is short, and that sucks. I didn't even get a year with you guys.
Yeah.
Before everything changed, and it's really hard to let go. Not saying that I need to, but I so badly just really want to stay in that life. And I don't know. We're going to have to bring like tissue.
Yeah, we'll think of that next time.
It's hard to not be a special needs mom. Once you're told that's what you are, and you need to figure out this life, and you don't stop, you run. Like, you just do what you have to do. And then one day that all goes away and you still don't want to stop.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't ever want to leave San Diego. And I know I don't. I just, I love seeing all of your guys' kids. And it makes me so happy, and I want to make a difference for them. I know that it's too late for us. But for all of like the fundraising, the 5K comedy shows, all of it, I just really hope that I can keep momentum going for them. It's hard to not have her around anymore.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
I don't want to.
And it's sad because having a child with that, you think about that every day, and it's one of those things you have to look forward and enjoy every moment that you have now, and hope that reality is either never going to come to terms because there'll be a cure, or it's not in any near future, because with mitochondrial disease you just don't know. It could be a normal day, and the next day they could have the flu and die in the hospital.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Well, not the flu,
but yeah, any different differences in their progression of their disease. So it's hard to think about that. And I feel blessed that I met you and that you're here with us and you're still fighting this fight for Angie and for all of our kids. And, we're so thankful. And, hopefully we can bring some of that hope and some of this comfort. It's like comfort, to other families.
That as much as you want your friends and family before Mito to understand and sympathize with, they can't.
No.
And it's no fault of their own. But they're not in your footsteps.
No.
So at least for me,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be near you guys.
Yeah, well, we want you near us.
Because I know we all had, like we were saying before, we all have had different stories, but in the experiences that I've had, you guys are the closest to understanding.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I'm so fortunate. My parents, my mom and my stepdad are, every time anybody's sick in the household, or Troy gets sick, they're right here. I have my friend that I've known since middle school that has literally helped me raise Troy. And if anybody, she's like a second mom to Troy, so she knows. I feel like she walks in my footsteps, and I have an amazing new husband that is right there with me. But the mental portion of it, I feel like, how I deal with it and having him as my child, it's a different thing. When you're a Mito mom, it's a different thing. It's keeping it together every day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was going to say something else that I completely forgot what it was. I think it's going to happen a lot.
It happens.
Oh,
Well, do we want to wrap this one up? We
Yeah.
have a website, and it is mitopodcast.com.
Yep.
And we also have an email at mitopodcast@gmail.com.
So if you guys have any stories you want to hear, have any ideas, anything that you want us to cover or find someone to cover, shoot us an email. Let us know. Let us know your story. It'd be awesome just to hear some comments, I guess.
Yeah. And you know, we have quite a few topics that we've already written down that we're going to cover. And, you know, we have some moms in mind that we'd like to talk to, but we'd love to hear from other people too, so that we're getting out there and reaching other families.
Yeah. We know not everyone's going to live in San Diego. We're going to be everywhere. Yeah. And we would like to bring, you know, I'm hoping too that I know that we're just Mito moms, but maybe something like this will inspire someone to research or get doctors who might not know anything about it, inspire them to do more research. And you just never know who you're going to, I used that word already, but inspire. You have to advocate, and hopefully this will be a forum that can just get more people involved. Absolutely. So I think the more chatter you hear about Mito, it's going to get the recognition that it deserves. Because right now it's still something that people don't talk about because they just don't know. No. And it needs to be a household name. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon. In the future to not digress. Yes. And we'll bring tissues. Yes. You should probably have some on hand too. Yes, exactly. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing our stories, and we will talk to you next time. Thank you.